Okay, good morning, everyone, and happy Kansas Day. As you probably heard us talking about before we started our webinar, today is the best day of the year in my mind. Kansas Day is a day to just celebrate the fact that we all live in this great state and how wonderful it is that we live in such a beautiful, wonderful place to visit and live and raise our families. So, um, with that, we're going to kick off this webinar. I know you hardly got any notice, but we are really excited to roll this program out. We just a couple of weeks ago got word that this was funded, and so we rolled out this program as fast as we could to try and make sure that you all had plenty of time to apply for this new grant opportunity. We're calling it WorKS, so a public broadcasting content grant. So we're going to go through what we expect from you as the applicants. We'll talk through our team. We'll kind of go through everything. So, well, sorry, Maren, go ahead and go back. Joining us today is the Office of Rural Prosperity team that'll primarily be your support system as you're going through this application process. So I am Tricia Purdon. I'm the director of the Office of Rural Prosperity in the Kansas Department of Commerce. And then joining us today, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Sheena, if you want to kick it off.
Hi, I'm Sheena Thomas. I'm a program manager at ORP, and I will be primarily managing this program with help from everyone else.
Hi there, I'm Maren Legali with the Office of Rural Prosperity. I'm also a program manager here.
Hi, I'm Cassie Alexander. I'm a program specialist with ORP.
Awesome. So this team is going to be the ones that will answer your calls, your emails, etc. Sheena is going to be your primary point of contact. But if you have any, more difficult questions or really want to get an idea about this program, I can also support you as well, since I helped write a majority of this program. So we are really excited to bring this program about. So let's go through what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to talk about the purpose of this grant. And I think that's always one of the more important things that if you're taking notes and you want to take a screenshot or whatever it is about this through this webinar, the purpose is really going to help you as you're crafting your narrative in this application. We're going to walk through our grant guidelines just so you're aware of everything that you need to know in order to apply. We'll walk through the timeline, both of the grant process and then what our expectations are for your project completion once you are awarded, ideally. We'll also talk through the eligibility requirements so everyone understands who can apply and who cannot apply for this program. We'll talk about the eligible projects, what we're really hoping to see that we would be willing to award for this grant. And then we'll really get into the details of the application components. So nothing catches you by surprise the last minute, and you're all well aware of everything you need to assemble. So let's talk about the purpose of this program. The thought was that we wanted to increase awareness of workforce development tools, workforce opportunities, emerging technology or innovations happening in rural Kansas, and new economic development or community trends that are really shaping how Kansans live and work across Kansas's rural regions. I'll emphasize rural again. This really is meant for our rural public broadcasting partners. And the funding of this Kansas Public Broadcasting Station should really aid in the development of original educational content dedicated to these subjects. We mean this to be pretty broad, and we want you to have creative license to come up with what makes sense to you and your listeners or your viewers. And we really are excited to kind of see that creative process that you're going through. Go ahead. So let's talk about the WorkCast grant guidelines. There is no cash match required. It is encouraged, and you can use an assortment of things to help match your grant. In-kind work, if you're going to be airing something and your staff time putting it together that you're obviously your station's going to be paying for, then that could be counted as match. Things like that will be good for you. So the minimum award is $10,000. And the reason why we have a minimum, honestly, is because less than that, just the administrative cost doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we want you to apply for at least $10,000. We want this to be a difference maker and really get a lot of content out to your communities. The maximum is $100,000. So if you go over $100,000, then that would be on your local match. So if you think your project's going to cost $125,000, then that $25,000 would have to be absorbed by your local station or partners, and that would then count towards your match in any type of funding mechanism. Your total funding available is $500,000. So that is the total amount that we have to give out for this round. We are hopeful that this could happen again, but right now this is one-time funding that was granted to us by the Kansas legislature. And we're really excited to roll this out. So all $500,000 will need to be fully spent by June 30th. So this process will move pretty rapidly once we do get awards made. I'll go ahead and go to the next. So speaking of which, let's talk about the grant award timeline so you're all aware. So the application just opened yesterday. It isn't submittable, which if you have applied for a grant with Commerce before, that's the older platform. It's a little more streamlined, a little easier, I think, sometimes for a brand new user. We had to roll this out again, like in about 14 days. So we're pretty excited we were able to use the submittable platform. We will host office hours throughout the grant period every single Thursday from February 5th to March 5th. So we're going to do that from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Those are come and go, right? So if you have questions and you want to put them all together to catch us at that one time, you can sit there during that office hours, listen to others ask questions and us answer those questions, offer all of your questions, and we'll, of course, answer those. But don't hesitate in the meantime to reach out to our team, and we'll have our contact information at the end of this presentation. But we just find that the office hours really help create a sense of community. So you're not out there alone applying. You'll learn kind of who the other applicants potentially are, I guess, that way. But they might have questions that you didn't think of that'll be really beneficial. So I definitely encourage you to take part in our office hours, even if you just want to listen in, and that's perfectly fine. The application will close at 5 p.m., and that's just really important, 5 p.m. on March 10th. We are really hoping to get these turned around incredibly fast. We do plan on having those awards announced in early to mid-April at the latest. But we are really wanting to make sure that you have plenty of time to apply. If you think that this deadline might not work for you, please reach out to us and let us know so that we can do what we can to support you and help you get things put together. But I want to emphasize again, it's 5 p.m. It's not midnight. Our staff just doesn't work until midnight. And if you have a technical difficulty or something's not submitting right or something's not uploading right, and you miss the deadline because something's required, there's no way we can help you get that submitted after that deadline. So 5 p.m. that way our staff can support you if something goes horribly wrong. We also want to make sure, don't wait until March 10th to apply. You never know when one of those glitches could happen. And if you do a submit and you're like, oh my God, I realized I forgot something, you can reach out to us and we can open your application back up again too. So if you submit early, it's totally fine. But if you submit late, there's nothing we can do about it. It literally will not let us do anything to help you. Okay, so the WorKS grant project timeline. So thinking about your timeline when you're working on your grant application. This is a good piece of the scoring when we'll talk about the rubric here in a minute when we review your applications. So we expect your projects to start and at least have some sort of community outreach plan, like who you're planning to reach, who are your target audiences that you want to make sure you're reaching out to, your service area, whatever that is. We need to have that at least completed 4 months from the award date. So if we make awards in April, then 4 months from April, you would sometime between April and that 4-month period, you would then send us this community outreach plan, what you're planning on submitting, a draft of what you're planning on submitting to people, and at least an area of your scope of your target audience. We do want to make sure that all projects are completed by June 30th of 2027. So we give you a little over a year to get this done. The reason why we have it set that way is because what if you guys decide you want to do a monthly podcast or a monthly series on amazing innovations happening in rural Kansas or rural Kansas workforce? This allows you to do a full 12 sessions and have some time to get those done in advance before that timeline starts. We love to see multiple things happen with this grant. So that's a nice pro tip that you can take away. Okay. So the eligible applicants, pretty simple. We want to see licensed public broadcasting stations that are serving Kansas communities. They can be television or radio. If you're not one of these, reach out to us. If you're a Kansas-based other type of media that has a large audience in Kansas that you think would be valuable, reach out to us. This isn't something that we're hardcore about, but we just want to make sure that our public broadcast stations in particular are the ones we primarily fund. But if you are affiliated with them and there's some sort of weird thing there, let us know and see if not, we can at least pair you with one of those licensed public broadcasting stations so that we can make sure that goal is met. Eligible program costs. So really, we are not the experts here when it comes to what it's going to take to create your program costs. So these are not hard and fast eligible program costs. If there's something outside that's not listed here, just let us know. But more likely, if that's what you think you're going to need, it's probably going to be something we'll approve. So production, post-production, editing, other content creation costs, equipment. Now, one important thing is that we will allow for new equipment if you need that, but it can only be 25% of your grant award. So if you're applying for $100,000, the equipment cannot exceed $25,000. If it does exceed that, then that would have to come out of a matched fund. Of course, all labor, supplies, staff time, travel, any additional music. If you have to buy the rights to some music to put in your piece, that's great. That's also eligible. Any marketing that you need to do about your programming, that's also eligible. And then if you have any administrative costs that are directly related to this project. So you have someone that's coordinated all this and coordinated your speakers or your musicians or whatever it is you're doing. Some of that cost is also eligible. I wouldn't recommend using all of your budget for that though, because that wouldn't be probably valued as highly in your budget evaluation when we're doing a review. So just keep that in mind to keep those costs to a minimum. So let's talk about ineligible expenses. These are pretty standard for all commerce grants, just so for future reference. Those are fundraising, taxes. We will not pay your taxes for you. And we'll talk a little bit about how we'll make sure that doesn't happen too later on. Of course, lobbying, political contributions, bad debt, late payment fees, parking or traffic violations. If you get a speeding ticket on your way to one of your production sites, we will not pay your speeding ticket. Out of state transportation, travel expenses. Again, this is about Kansas. So if you're going out of state, those costs would not be covered. So ineligible projects. So if you have a project that doesn't provide content covering the targeted areas I talked about in that purpose, and that you'll see in the grant guidelines for more details, if it doesn't target workforce growth or development, something like that, it's probably not going to be covered under this grant. Any capital projects. So if you're adding on new studio space or improving your current broadcasting space, that none of that is eligible. Infrastructure related to the building or construction. If you need to run new electrical, I'm sorry, that's not eligible. And then any administrative or general operating expenses related to just the general operations of the public broadcasting station, those are not eligible either. So let's talk about the eligibility requirements and what we're really looking for. So these are the key pieces of your application. So this would be a really important piece to take note of. So the funding is to be used to create educational or documentary style content that addresses one of the 4 required themes for rural workforce growth and development. So the first one is around emerging technologies and rural economic development. Again, this is pretty broad. And again, you have creative license here. So thinking about how technology such as broadband, AI, automation, telehealth are just reshaping rural jobs across our state, or tell us real stories about Kansas communities using innovation to sustain their local economy and help their rural community grow or thrive. Um, the second one is about remote work readiness. This is something that we're seeing so much across our state, and we would really love to hear more about what's happening here. So, best practices for identifying or applying for and thriving in remote and hybrid jobs. Reaching out to those Kansans that are currently doing remote work and how this has worked well in their community, and maybe how they've been able to give back in their community because of this rural remote work. Educational series sorry, on digital literacy, online professionalism, or cybersecurity for rural workers. Again, these are all really cool jobs that are now available that you can do remotely and might be something that others would want to learn more about. And again, yes, this is for public broadcasting stations in Kansas, but we obviously want to shout to the rooftops across the whole country and the world how amazing Kansas is. So if we can recruit some new Kansans out of this material, that's always the best. So our rural workforce resources is the third area that you can do your material over. So spotlighting state or local economic development programs, workforce training centers, or entrepreneurship hubs. There's so many of these really cool things that are happening across our state, and we would love to see these highlighted. Successful stories of rural Kansas leveraging all of these resources to grow careers or businesses. I was just told about some incredible businesses that have popped up in rural parts of our state that have relied on these entrepreneurship hubs and maker spaces to now grow this worldwide exporting business that has really taken off. Apparently, they've gone viral on TikTok. So there's amazing things that are happening across our state that we would love to see highlighted to show others why Kansas is a great place to have their business and their family. So the fourth is around youth and the future of work. This is personally one of my favorites. I'm really excited. I hope someone does cover some content around this. So really thinking about helping rural high school or college age students explore remote or tech-enabled careers that allow them to stay in their rural communities. This is so important to make sure that our youth know that Kansas is a great place to stay and grow your life and your family and your career. So let's show them. Like we talk about preaching to the choir, but we need to make sure our choir is ready to sing, right? So our students are hearing about the amazing things going on in Kansas. So let's make sure that we provide them this information so they know this is the opportunity that they can look forward to. So let's talk about eligible projects and really dive in deep on the emerging technologies in rural economic development. So this is something that if you really want to dive in on how broadband maybe has impacted rural communities, again, building upon some of these other themes, you could do a program on how the whole state is now covered with broadband, and everyone now has access to high-speed internet across our state. How AI and the automation processes of workforce have improved safety in our workplaces and has allowed for new jobs that maybe wouldn't have been available in our rural communities before around robotics and programming of our robotic systems. There's so many opportunities that are currently happening that you might not be aware of that are absolutely incredible happening all across our state. Thinking about telehealth. I mean, how are we now allowing to our families to be serviced by telehealth providers? So if you're based in Elkhart, perhaps, and you're using telehealth to receive mental health or other services out of Dodge City or Garden City, that allows for that person to receive services in their hometown of Elkhart and not have to drive the several hours to get to the nearest city to receive those services. That really improves the quality of life of our rural communities. That could be a great piece about talking about how rural Kansas lives are improved by this new technology. And what a great series that could be. Thinking about real stories of rural Kansas communities using this innovation to sustain local economies is also something that could be really cool. Again, you all have creative license here. And we've seen other communities talk to individuals that have maybe recently moved to Kansas, knowing that they came here for an innovation position and how that's been able to contribute to their community, either as an individual or their business. So again, lots of opportunity here, lots of creative license here, and we look forward to seeing kind of who might delve into this piece. Remote work readiness is another really cool thing. We've worked with so many different organizations that have focused on remote work readiness. K-State has a great program that'll train individuals on how to be great remote workers for their businesses. So thinking about best practices for identifying, applying for, and thriving in remote or hybrid jobs. This necessarily doesn't have to be one piece, right? You could do a series that includes all of these things. But if you're thinking about someone who might want to move here from Georgia or Florida or Oregon, Kansas might be the great place to work remotely for one of these large corporations in those states. And they could be based in a beautiful remote um, community where you have sunsets and prairies and the best parts of Kansas. So the next piece is educational series on digital literacy, online professionalism, or cybersecurity for rural workers. Thinking about all these rural remote workers, and cybersecurity is a really big piece of that, right? So how do you help these workers maintain safe workplaces so they can continue to grow, or opportunities in cybersecurity or other things like that that could show people what opportunities are available? We also have so many rural workforce resources across our state that it's hard to even highlight all the different opportunities that are available. So spotlighting state or local economic development programs, what if you went out and talked to the folks at the Northwest Innovation Center and the work that they're doing to promote workforce opportunities in Northwest Kansas? Entrepreneurship hubs. Let's go talk to Network Kansas and find about the awesome entrepreneurship opportunities, or so many amazing co-working spaces that have popped up across our state. All of these are great opportunities for content that could be created. And then think about the success stories that rural Kansans have had leveraging all of these resources to grow their careers or businesses. I can think of one business in Independence, where our office is located, that utilized all of the entrepreneurship programs that Network Kansas offered. And then she went into a co-working space. And then she grew so much that she went on to renovate a downtown building using a Kansas Department of Commerce program. And now she has a thriving business that serves an entire region of Southeast and Northeast Oklahoma, Southeast Kansas and Northeast Oklahoma. So it's really incredible to see some of this story happen across our state, and we would love to see content around that. So then youth and the future of work. This is going to be the fun one, right? Let's go talk to our youth. Let's go see what's going on in the classrooms. What are the innovations that maybe our teachers are doing? How are we enabling these students to get into these tech-enabled careers that allow them to stay in their rural communities potentially? This is an opportunity that I think we're not talking about enough. And that's why this was specifically called out by the Kansas legislature as something that we should be really talking to our youth about. This is the opportunity to really get that message across. So we're really looking forward to this piece. Okay, so here are your takeaways. If you apply for this program, you have to guarantee that you're going to do at least these 4 things. You will create at least one broadcast quality program or series. That could be on TV, radio, or some sort of digital format. One is obviously the minimum. We would like to see more than one piece, unless, of course, it's a long piece, of course. Then also that material needs to have accompanying digital content. So a podcast that goes along that really goes into more detail. You often watch those shows that has, stay tuned for the interview about this session with the director. Like, what is that going to look like? So thinking about those pieces. So online article series, maybe that really dive in more deeply to that content. Social media shorts, reels, TikToks, whatever those might be for you. All of that is valuable content. And again, you have to make sure you share that with us. So then you'll also have to have a public engagement plan. So again, where I talked about that 4-month deadline. So we want to know what your plan is to get the public engaged with the content, who this content is going to be reaching, your target audiences. So are you going to be hosting town halls? Are you going to be hosting webinars to get more community engagement in your process, or community screenings of maybe the amazing documentary you're putting together? How are you going to engage your listening audience to make sure that that message is heard and it's really getting into your target audience's ears and eyes, and it's going to make an impact in your region? And then lastly, when you're getting close to complete with your project, we'll need a brief impact summary with metrics like your audience reach, community engagement, lessons learned on your project completion, and then your published broadcast period. Once that's completed, you'll get all of that put together. So we just want to know when it was released, a copy of when it was released, proof that it actually happened, of course, and then just letting us know how it went and what your lessons were learned. Is this something that would be valuable for the legislature to know, to see if maybe there's future funding opportunities? This is really critical if we ever want to be able to do this program again. So please make sure you get those to us, if you can, as soon as possible, of course. So again, our funding priorities will be based on the following. So one, how well the proposal addresses rural workforce and remote work themes. Two, your originality of your concept, your creativity and potential to inform and inspire rural Kansans, and even those that aren't in Kansas to maybe come to Kansas. Strength of your collaboration is third. Thinking about your collaboration with those rural communities, those workforce entities or other local organizations. Did you involve the local economic development organizations or chambers of commerce, Main Street organizations, our Kansas Works workforce centers? Who helped you in making sure that your target audience has really heard this message? Fourth is making sure that your project has a realistic scope. If you're going to be putting on, a 12-part hour-long series, one a month, and you're going to be using Francis Ford Coppola to do your piece, that might not be realistic. And so we can always wish for pie in the sky and the amazing opportunities you can have, but let's make sure that your scope is actually realistic. Also, again, you have until June 30th of 2027. So you have just over a year to get this done. So making sure that timeline is truly realistic as well. And then that you actually have the technical capacity. That is going to be a piece that you should definitely emphasize in your application of your skill sets of your team and how you plan on accomplishing this goal that you're going to tell us all about. And then lastly, the clarity of your audience engagement and sustainability beyond the grant period. Is this content that you think you can keep building upon? Will you be able to continue some of this work, additional broadcasting across the state on some of your initiatives? Is this something that you would like to continue to push and grow? Tell us more about that. And that's what we're definitely going to be looking at when we're scoring your application. So then your application components. This is the technical piece of this webinar. So your attachments and support materials do have to be uploaded into the application through Submittable. Make sure you pay attention to the file names, the types of files that we will accept. We try to make sure we accept nearly everything, but content, for example, like HEIC files really don't work so well, which is the live. If you use an iPhone and you film something live video, make sure that live is turned off because HEIC files just don't like Submittable. Things like that. So make sure that you're aware of that. We will not accept attachments or support materials by any other method. This is where we talked about, make sure you do this before March 10th at 5 p.m. because if you're having difficulties uploading something, we really have to stick to making sure that you got it in through Submittable. So give yourself some time. We can definitely offer technical support. We are there for you to help get this done. Sorry. Then we need to make sure we have your production and dissemination plan, just a general plan for how the applicant plans to air the content. So tell us how you're planning to award it or get the message out to the folks that are in your service area, and that needs to be included in your application. Then we also want to see at least one letter of support from partners. Again, this goes back to that community engagement. If you're going to be interviewing the Kansas Workforce Center staff, let's get an application or a letter of support from some of those Kansas Workforce Center regional directors that said, yeah, we're on board and we're excited about this opportunity. Then just samples of prior educational or community focused programming. If that's a video or if it's screenshots of things, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure that you get those uploaded and submittable. If you have any difficulty, again, just let us know and we'll work with you to see if there's anything we can do to get those materials uploaded. So now we have our standard forms, and there's nothing we can do about some of these. They're kind of odd sometimes, but we have to have a signed copy of the state policy regarding sexual harassment. We obviously need to have a W-9 from the organization so that we can properly give you your money and send you the tax form at the end of the year. We have a form we call the OPC form that's also required as a required document per the legislature. And so that just basically shows that you're not going to be using uh, countries that are on a list that you won't be buying technology from certain places, basically. If you're applying for a $100,000 grant request, you also have to include a signed Israeli anti-boycott form. So that will also be required. So if you don't want to sign an Israeli anti-boycott form, then only apply for $99,999, I suppose. But that is required if you do receive $100,000. And then if you're a business or a nonprofit organization, something we've added on this year is that we need at least a screenshot. You don't have to pay for it, just a screenshot is fine, that shows that the Kansas Secretary of State has given you a good standing status. You are not required to pay for that certificate of good standing. Just the screenshot of the web page that says that you are good, it will be perfectly fine. So that does confuse folks at times. So just go to the Secretary of State website and you can get that once you plug in your information of your organization. And then if you're, again, for individuals, businesses, and nonprofit organizations, we also need your submission of your tax clearance certificate. So when I said earlier, ineligible expenses, so paying your taxes, if you're behind on your taxes and you receive a grant from Kansas, it doesn't get garnished basically to cover those. So we do have to make sure that you're including your tax clearance certificate. Now, one key piece here is that can take some days to get back. So if you're planning on applying right now, go ahead and get that process started right now. That can get going in the works. You can save it once it comes in, put it in a folder, and then you're ready to go on your application. Do not wait until March 10th. You will not receive it, and then you will automatically not be eligible. You won't even be reviewed. We'll just kick you out of the program. So please, please, please go get that tax clearance certificate now. And basically just says that you don't owe back taxes. So let's talk about the application review. The maximum number of points an application can earn is 100 points. Pretty standard. We have a scoring rubric, which is on the website that you can look at. Each of our reviewers will individually score each application or each section that's assigned to them, however we decide we're going to structure this one. So this rubric is on the website and you can look at that. And once you're done with your application, I would strongly recommend that you have someone who isn't part of your application take that scoring rubric, read through your application, and score you. If you get above 70, great. If you don't score above 70, according to our rubric, you should probably go back and work on your application some more. That tends to be the cutoff that we do for all of our reviews. So again, like if you're in school, right, a 70 is a C, not a D. And so that's not a great grade if you're in school. So think about it that way. Our funding priority criteria, excuse me. There we go. Sorry. Our funding priority criteria may be allocated to a higher percentage of the total score or weighted more. You'll be able to see that on the scoring rubric. So, there might be areas where we give it 25 or 30 points instead of 10 or 15 or 20 across the board. You have to earn enough points for your application to fall under meets expectations, exceeds expectations, or exemplary to be recommended for funding. So again, that's that 70 score threshold. If you do not, even if you get above a 70, it does not guarantee funding for your project, but it would at least allow you to get to the next stage of the review period. So let's talk about our selection criteria. We have $500,000 available for the WorKS Public Broadcasting Content Grant. So all the applications will be reviewed and approved by the Kansas Department of Commerce, will be funded according to the process set forth in the following. So of course, it's our grant reviewer scores. And usually we have a panel of 3 to 5 people that will be reviewing these applications. They're not all Commerce employees. In fact, we usually have outside folks that aren't part of Commerce that will help us review these. Especially on this program, I mean, we really want to make sure we've got folks that know this kind of work that you're all doing and are very familiar with it. I am not a public broadcaster, and nor have I ever been, and I don't think anyone on our team has ever been. So we really rely on the expertise from others to help us with this review process. We also always take into account the geographic distribution of grant applicants. One of the biggest things that our leadership tells us is that we want to make sure that all parts of our state have an opportunity for this funding. So we likely won't award all in one small area, right? So they're not all going to go to Northeast Kansas. We will make sure that they are spread out across the state. We also want to make sure that we take into account the history of the grant applicant as a state grantee. So here's another pro tip. If you currently have a grant outstanding with the state of Kansas, I would suggest touching base with that program manager, making sure you're in good standing and you're caught up on all of your reporting documentation before you hit submit, because that is something that we will take into account. If you're currently behind on your quarterly reports, or you have already received a grant from Commerce and maybe we had difficulty getting a hold of you or contacting you, that is something that we will factor in. So it's always important to stay in contact with your program managers. And then, of course, your applicant's capacity to perform the work. If we don't think that you can, based on the information you provided us, probably not going to get a great score on that piece. And then we will do a capacity assessment of the applicant during that pre-award process, just to make sure that we think that you can handle this. That doesn't usually factor into whether or not we award you, but it does usually factor into how much support we plan on providing for your organization. So that usually doesn't factor as heavily in some of these. And then lastly, and of course, with all Kansas Commerce grants, they will be approved by the Secretary of Commerce. So Lieutenant Governor and Secretary of Commerce David Toland does have final decision on all of our recommendations we'll put forth after we've factored all of these things in to our recommendation. We're doing the grant payments a little differently this year. One, because of the timing of the year, we got to make sure all this funding is allocated. But we are going to do this in 2 installments. Since there's no match requirement, we want to make sure that you have as much upfront to help support this work as possible. So your first payment will be 75% of your award amount upon fully executed grant agreement. So once or if you're awarded, we'll go through a process where we will encumber the funds and we'll route a grant agreement that'll come from DocuSign. So keep that in mind. Our legal division will be routing that. Once we get that fully executed, that's when we'll start processing your payments. The second payment will be 25% of your award amount. And that's when you're about 50% of your grant award is spent, that you've already spent, and you're about 50% of the way through your process. And then we'll go ahead and award out your final 25% of your grant award. And you'll just let us know when that happens. So let's, if you have any questions, we can drop those in the Q&A or the chat, and we can try to answer those questions for you here. And then, of course, if you don't have any questions right now, you can go ahead and email Sheena Thomas, sheena.thomas@ks.gov, and she can help answer your questions as well outside of the normal office hours. Okay. So yeah, so someone was asking if we can make the slide deck available to you. So yes, of course. So these slides in this webinar will be posted to the Kansas Department of Commerce website. It'll be posted to this program's website. You'll see that probably in the next couple days, we'll get that uploaded. So if you missed something or you want to go back and watch it with other folks on your team, that will be available. If you have questions after this webinar is completed and you need to drill in, you can schedule time with us to ask those questions or just give us a call or an email. We're really here to support you throughout this application process. Do not hesitate at all. You're not bothering us. This is exactly what we're here for. Okay. I'm not seeing a whole lot of questions. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up. We will be available again for office hours next Thursday. And so if you have any questions, feel free to just hop on then. You can go ahead and you can find that link to register for those office hours in the press release. You can also follow along on our Facebook. We will post any other ideas or pro tips, office hours links, all that fun stuff will be there, and also in our newsletters. So thank you all so much. And we're really excited to join all of you in this journey to create some awesome new educational content to support workforce and innovation across our state. Thank you all so much. And I can't wait to talk to all of you.